So, our main source for this incredible sequence of events is 33-year-old Diane Brennan. Picture this. It's just 5 days before her sister Renee's wedding. Diane is sitting alone in her apartment kitchen, her coffee's going completely cold, and she receives this clean, surgical text message from her mother. It just says, "You're uninvited, your sister is marrying into old money, and we won't have your drama embarrassing us." Ouch, right? No explanation, just an outright ban. Now, to really understand the sheer gravity of this text, we have to understand their background. Diane and Renee were raised by a single mother. They were constantly clawing their way through, late rent and layaway Christmases. But now, Renee was marrying into so-called old money. And suddenly, Diane, who I guess represented their authentic working-class reality, became an inconvenience. She was a stain they were absolutely terrified might show up on the guest list and shatter this brand new high society illusion they were building. But of course, as Diane notes, her mom never delivered bad news without following it up with something designed to just twist the knife a little bit deeper. Less than a minute after that brutal text, a photo comes through. It's an engagement picture of Renee and her groom. And this isn't just any photo. This is the kind of polished, heavily curated image shot by a photographer who charges at least $300 an hour just so the lighting hits perfectly. You know the type. Renee is glowing in this gorgeous champagne dress. The groom has his arm wrapped perfectly around her waist. It is literally the absolute picture of manufactured, unbothered wealth, and it was designed entirely to make Diane feel small and excluded. But here's the thing. That $300 an hour illusion, it didn't even last a full minute. Honestly, it took exactly 3 seconds. Diane looks at the groom's face in this pristine photo for 3 seconds, and then this visceral reaction just takes over her entire body. She describes going totally cold, then hot, and then her chest just cracks open into this manic, uncontrollable shaking laughter. Like her ribs actually hurt, her eyes are watering. Why? Because she recognized him. And I'm not talking about from some charity gala or a fancy golf clubhouse. No, she instantly recognized this man from exactly 4 years prior. And the context of how she knew him was so completely removed from champagne toasts and old money that her brain could barely even process the two images sitting together. And this brilliantly illustrates the jarring, terrifying contrast that Diane was suddenly staring at. I mean, the glossy wedding website boasted Weston Cole, heir to Cole Maritime Holdings. But the reality Diane actually knew? Julian Ferris, a literal fugitive investment scammer. She knew the small scar right above his left eyebrow. She knew that calculating look behind his perfect smile. The man her sister was about to marry in 5 days was living a complete double life, and her family had absolutely no clue. Let's look a little closer at how he actually pulled this off, because the mechanics of this scam are just fascinating. Cole Maritime Holdings wasn't just some offhand lie about having money. He built a bespoke, totally fabricated entity specifically designed to lure in a family exactly like the Brennans, who were just so desperate for status. He gave himself a family name supposedly attached to 3 golf courses and a shipping company. I mean, he knew exactly what Renee and her mother wanted to hear, so they'd feel like they had finally made it. He constructed this trap perfectly tailored to exploit their deepest class insecurities. Obviously, Diane knew she needed undeniable proof, so she immediately called up Grant Holloway. He's a private investigator she actually knew from a previous landlord dispute. She knew for a fact he could pull a real background check way faster than a simple Google search. And man, Grant delivered hard facts incredibly fast. First off, Julian had been under investigation 2 years prior for a scheme that drained the retirement accounts of at least 6 different families. 6! Second, that super impressive Cole Maritime website, it had only been registered 8 months ago. And third, they literally found courthouse photos of him appearing under yet another name just 18 months prior. The whole thing was a house of cards. Which brings us to a sickeningly ironic detail here. $3,000. Diane's mother was so proud of the wealth her future son-in-law brought to the family, right? Probably swooning over the expensive $3,000 suits he wore in all those engagement photos. But when you actually look at the PI's findings, you realize that this lavish facade, literally every expensive dinner, every single tailored suit, was likely funded directly by destroying the retirement accounts of innocent families. He was quite literally wearing stolen futures just to impress his next victims. I want to pause the pacing here for a second and ask you to step directly into Diane's shoes. Really think about this. What do you do when the truth looks exactly like jealous revenge? Diana's holding a literal ticking time bomb. The wedding is in 5 days. But she also has that unanswered text sitting on her phone from her mother telling her she's uninvited for causing drama. If Diane calls her mom right now and says, hey, the groom is a massive fraud, it is going to be instantly dismissed. They'll just say it's bitter, vindictive jealousy from the rejected working-class sister. It's honestly the perfect storm of family dysfunction actively protecting a predator. Let's move to and see how this builds into action, because Diane makes a very calculated, absolutely brilliant choice right here. She realizes that some truths simply cannot be delivered through a screen or over a quick phone call. So she gathers up all the financial records, the fake domain registrations, the courthouse photos, and she drives straight to her sister Renee's apartment to confront her face-to-face. Step 4 is the most absolutely crucial part of her plan. Let the documents do the talking. She didn't go in there and argue. She just handed Renee the folder and asked her to sit down. The way Diane describes this next moment is just incredibly powerful. Renee opened the door super annoyed, obviously expecting a huge blowout argument about the guest list. But as she flipped through the pages, Diane just sat there and watched the facade literally break down on her sister's face in real time. First, looking at the financial records, there was just confusion. She protested, saying she'd met his parents and seen his office. Then, looking at the fabricated documents, it shifted into this stubborn, hard disbelief. But here's the thing, documents don't lie the way people do. By the time she reached that courthouse photo, the disbelief finally hardened into pure, devastating grief. Renee's hands began trembling exactly the way Diane's had back in her kitchen. The illusion was completely dead. Following that intense confrontation, the fallout was rapid and absolute. It was basically a chaotic whiplash packed into a single week. The grand wedding that was supposed to happen in 5 days immediately canceled. The venue was called off, and a frantic call was made to a security firm to literally protect the family from the man they were about to welcome in with open arms. And then, just 3 days after the wedding was supposed to take place, Diane gets a phone call. It's her mother, and her mother's voice is smaller than Diane has ever heard it in her life. She was humbled, genuinely asking for her daughter's help to try and figure out what on earth to do next. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the broader impact of what Diane actually did. This wasn't just about saving her sister from a horrific marriage. She literally stopped a serial predator in his tracks. When Julian's real name resurfaced because of the canceled wedding and those security calls, the subsequent police report connected him to the 6 original families he drained, plus 2 entirely new victims in a completely different state, who finally reached out. By pushing past all that toxic family drama and acting on the truth, Diane inadvertently halted a cross-country crime spree. It's wild. A few months later, the 2 sisters actually managed to sit down for coffee, and Renee admitted something pretty incredible. She told Diane that if she hadn't laughed at that photo, like if Diana had just felt hurt, cried, or sent an angry, defensive text back, Renee might never have actually questioned the elaborate con. Think about that. That manic, shock-induced laugh from a sister who knew the real world. It was literally the only warning sign strong enough to penetrate the incredibly dense bubble of fake old money Julian had built around her. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly by Diane's own realization. That feeling of being underestimated right before you become the one who saves everyone. Diane stepped up. And she didn't do it because her family's cruel text didn't hurt. It absolutely did. But because true family loyalty often means showing up when it's the hardest. It means carrying a really heavy burden to protect the very people who just tried to push you away. Against all odds, she saved her family from complete financial and emotional ruin. And it leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on today. If you were handed the undeniable power to save the very people who just threw you away, would you? Thank you so much for walking through this explainer with me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the facts,